Have you ever calculated how much money you're literally throwing away on your garden every month? I'm not talking about seeds or tools. I'm talking about your water and fertilizer bills. In a typical garden, up to 30% to 40% of the water you apply daily evaporates straight into the air before it even touches the roots. During a harsh summer, that number can skyrocket to 50%. We end up wasting money on water, breaking our backs dragging hoses around, and then spending even more on synthetic fertilizers just to stimulate a root system that is already stressed from dehydration. It's a deeply exhausting and expensive cycle. Yet, here is the paradox. Every time we clean up the yard or prune our plants, we gather all the dry branches and old logs to discard or burn them. Did you know you are literally torching what I like to call a massive biological battery? Centuries ago, high-altitude farmers discovered a way to hack the entire operational system of the soil. This method is based on the principle of mound culture using rotting wood, also known as Hugelkultur. Today, I'm not here to talk about internet theories. I'll show you how to turn garden waste into an underground sponge that automatically retains water and supplies nutrients for 10 years, cutting your water bill in half while keeping your plants lush through the scorching summer heat. Science and the data. Inside the underground sponge. To understand why dry wood holds such incredible power, we have to look inside its molecular structure. When a tree is alive, its wood is a network of vertical tubes called xylem vessels, designed to pull water from the roots to the leaves. When the tree dies and begins to rot, these tubes don't disappear. Native fungi and microorganisms move in, consuming and breaking down the rigid lignin structure, turning these solid tubes into millions of microscopic, honeycomb-like hollow chambers. At this point, the rotting log officially transforms into a biological sponge with an incredibly impressive ability to store water, scientifically known as water retention capacity. A typical piece of rotting wood can absorb and store an amount of water equivalent to 3 to 4 times its own dry weight. When it rains, or when you water, instead of the moisture running off or draining too deep past the roots, this layer of rotting wood catches all of it. It locks the water away in a cool underground vault, completely isolated from sunlight, blocking 100% of evaporation. So, how do plants draw this water back up? When the topsoil dries out from the heat, it creates a phenomenon known as a moisture gradient, which is the difference in moisture amplitude between soil layers. The plant roots will automatically smell the abundant water source below and grow deep into the hollow chambers of the wood fibers. Water is then drawn upward through the mechanism of capillary action, molecule by molecule, perfectly matching the plant's needs. You never have to worry about your plants drowning or suddenly drying out again. There's another figure that will surprise you. The carbon decomposition process driven by fungi and bacteria inside the wood creates a microbial exothermic reaction, a powerful biological heat-releasing reaction. It acts just like a low-energy underground heater. Actual measurements show that the soil bed inside a wood core system remains 4 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than regular garden soil. In regions with cold winters, this warms the root zone in early spring and late autumn, extending the growing season by 4 to 6 weeks a year. In hot climates, it keeps the soil temperature from fluctuating drastically between day and night, preventing the plants from going into thermal shock. Furthermore, this is an absolute paradise for beneficial root fungi, especially the mycorrhizae system. Rotting wood provides the perfect moisture and carbon for these fungal filaments to thrive. They form a symbiotic relationship with the plant roots, effectively extending the root surface area up to 100 times, helping the plant absorb stubborn, insoluble minerals like phosphorus and potassium with ease. something no synthetic fertilizer can replicate. The soil sandwich formula, step by step. It sounds a bit complex, right? But the actual execution is incredibly simple and beautifully rustic. I like to call this the 4-layer soil sandwich formula. We will stack the raw materials according to the exact percentage of the total bed depth to achieve maximum efficiency. First is the bottom layer, the water retention core, making up 40% of the total depth. Here, you want to pack the largest, heaviest logs you have. It is best to use old tree trunks with a diameter of 4 to 8 inches, or large pieces of firewood. The larger the wood, the longer it takes to decompose, meaning your battery will last for more years. Pack them tightly together to create a solid foundation. This will be the long-term carbon and water bank for the entire system. Right above that, we reach the second layer, the transition layer, making up 20%. You use smaller branches, twigs, and small pruned wood stacked on top of the large logs. The purpose of this layer is to act as a filtration mesh, while narrowing down the large air pockets between the bottom logs. Next is the third layer, the activation layer, making up 15%. This is a vital step. You need to spread a layer of nitrogen-rich materials like fresh grass clippings, organic kitchen scraps, green leaves, or a thin layer of compost. This layer acts as the spark that triggers the microorganisms to dive in and decompose the dry wood below. Finally, we have the top layer, the planting soil, making up 25%. You cover the very top with a layer of high-quality topsoil with a minimum thickness of 6 to 8 inches so that young seedlings have enough room to develop during the first few months before the wood underneath has time to break down. You can mix in a little worm castings or well-rotted manure into this layer to start planting immediately. From here, you have 2 choices for the shape of your bed, depending on your local terrain. If you deal with clay soil, poor drainage, or excessive rainfall, follow the mound culture model. Mound. You simply stack the wood right on the ground and build the layers upward like a small levee. Conversely, if you are working with limited space, want to keep a clean, flat surface appearance, or live in an arid region where you need to maximize water retention, use the sunken bed method, sunken. You dig a trench about 16 inches, or 1.5 feet, deep into the ground, layer all 4 steps down inside, and then refill the soil until it sits flush with the ground level. From the outside, nobody will know there is a massive secret underneath, but the plants on top will flourish beautifully. Now, I know what you're thinking. Won't burying all this wood attract termites right next to my house? Here's the science. Subterranean termites look for dry, decaying wood in dead zones. In a properly managed hugelkultur bed, the high moisture levels and active fungal network actually digest the wood faster than termites can colonize it. Plus, these forest microbes turn the wood into humus, which isn't a food source for termites. You are building an ecosystem, not a termite bait station. You are building an ecosystem, not a termite bait station. 4 critical mistakes. This method is incredibly straightforward, but to be completely honest with you, when I first started, I failed miserably because of oversight. When it comes to gardening, it's not just about knowing how to do things right, but clearly understanding what not to do. That is why I have compiled the 4 fatal mistakes you absolutely must avoid if you don't want to turn your plant bed into a dead zone. The first mistake: using the wrong type of wood. Not every tree you cut down can be buried, my friends. Look at this blacklist. You must absolutely steer clear of black walnut wood, cedar, or any tree species that are highly antibacterial or packed with potent essential oils. Why? Black walnut contains a chemical compound called juglone, a natural herbicide secreted by the tree to wipe out competing plant species around it. This substance can stunt and kill up to 90% of nightshade crops like tomatoes, peppers, and potatoes if their roots touch it. On the other hand, cedar or oil-heavy woods have antibacterial properties that are simply too strong. They resist decomposition, preventing beneficial microorganisms from nesting. The result is that your wood bed remains completely inert, like an undigested obstacle, a stubborn, non-decomposable block that serves no purpose. The second mistake, the nitrogen lockdown syndrome. This is the most common pitfall for organic gardening beginners. Dry wood is a highly pure source of carbon. To break down this massive amount of carbon, microorganisms require a heavy dose of nitrogen to fuel their activity. If you forget to add the third layer, the nitrogen-rich activation layer, as I instructed earlier, the microorganisms will frantically rob all the available free nitrogen out of your topsoil just to digest the logs. The result? The nitrogen levels in your soil drop to zero, leaving your plants yellowing, stunted, and severely malnourished for the first 12 to 18 months. Remember, if you bury wood, you must compensate with organic nitrogen. The third mistake, leaving too many air pockets. When stacking logs and branches, if you backfill the soil carelessly, you will create suspended gaps filled with air between the branches. When plant roots grow down and hit these air pockets, the root tips will dry out and stop growing. Even worse, after a few heavy rains, the topsoil will collapse severely into these empty hollows, snapping the stems and breaking the roots of the plants growing above. The pro tip here is to compress them firmly as you lay the smaller branches, or spray them down with a strong jet of water to force the soil and dry leaves into every single crack. The final mistake, using chemically treated wood. Many people try to salvage old shipping pallets, construction lumber, or discarded wooden furniture. Please do not do this. Industrial wood is almost always treated with highly toxic chemical compounds like copper, chromium, or arsenic to prevent termites. When you bury them, these toxins leach directly into the soil, wiping out your entire native microecosystem, and even worse, they can contaminate the very vegetables your family eats every day. Stick exclusively to completely raw, natural wood. Measuring ROI and conclusion. To wrap up today's video, I want us to do a quick efficiency calculation, evaluating the return on investment on costs. Let's look at a realistic comparison between a conventional garden bed and a buried wood system after 5 years of operation. With a traditional bed, every single year you have to expend labor tilling, topping it up with fresh compost, and watching your watering costs climb over time. The soil also tends to become compacted and depleted over time if subjected to harsh, heavy-handed interventions. With a buried wood bed, your upfront financial cost is virtually zero. You only invest about 3 hours of labor to dig the trench and stack the soil sandwich layers. In return, for the next 10 years, you won't ever need to till deep because the expanding and contracting wood underneath does that job for you. Your watering needs drop by up to 70% thanks to the underground sponge, and your fertilizer input costs drop to a bare minimum. From year 3 onward, as the wood fibers break down completely, they transform into a rich, deep black humus, the highest value, most life-rich soil on the planet. You are investing once and reaping the rewards for a decade. The philosophy of gardening with nature has never been about trying to control or alter its rules. It's about learning to replicate the smartest systems that nature has already run for millions of years in primary forests. Stop burning your garden waste, bury it, scientifically. That is how we work smarter, not harder. If you found today's scientific breakdown helpful for your gardening journey, please hit that subscribe button. What kind of wood do you currently have available in your yard? Leave a comment below, and I'll help you check if it falls under the safe green list or the dangerous red list. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish your garden stays forever lush. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.